nationwide this evening, the connections between Poland and Ireland are marked with a new exhibition of paintings by Polish artist Casimir Markievicz, who fell in love and married Constance Gorbuz. We hear of their bohemian life in Dublin, and we meet members of the Markievicz family who recently visited Lissadell House in County Sligo, the childhood home of Countess Markievicz. The name Markievicz may be familiar to many people owing to the legacy of the Irish revolutionary Countess Markievicz. She got her striking surname when she married a Polish Count, Casimir Markievicz. The couple were a fixture in artistic circles in Dublin in the early 20th century. Now, an exhibition here at Dublin Castle celebrates the life and work of Casimir Markievicz and includes many works which have not been seen in public for over 100 years. The exhibition has been organised in honour of Poland's presidency of the EU Council, in collaboration with the OPW and the Polish Embassy. It focuses on Casimir Markiewicz's life on the Dublin art scene from 1903 to 1913 and features over 80 pieces of work gathered from private and state collections, including exhibits loaned by the extended Markievicz family in Poland. The show also commemorates the work of Casimir's wife, Countess Markievicz, and her role as a major cultural and revolutionary figure in Ireland. This has to be the unmistakable figure of Constance Gorbuz.
It is. It's one of the most important paintings in the exhibition. It's from the National Gallery of Ireland. As you can see, it's almost a life-size, full-length portrait of Constance that was painted in 1899 by Casimir Markievicz in Paris. In this room, which is the first room of the exhibition, which is about their meeting, it's about their early lives as well, and we have quite a number of pictures that were painted by Casimir that are part of the collection of Lissadell House in County Sligo, which is of course where Constance grew up, and today has a very important collection of artworks from both Casimir and Constance and many of their contemporaries as well.
So Casimir himself is in the corner there?
Yeah, so that's a self-portrait of Casimir there smoking a pipe, so he does lots of self-portraits, so there's a number of them that are here in the exhibition, and that's one of them.
Constance Gorbuz was born into great wealth and privilege in 1868. She had an idyllic childhood, growing up on the family's estate of Lissadell in County Sligo. She had a passion for painting and sketching that led her to Paris to study at the prestigious Académie Julian. Countess Markievicz is a name that's familiar to everybody in Ireland, not so the man who gave her surname, Casimir. Who was Casimir Markievicz?
Casimir Markievicz was born just outside of Kyiv. He was a member of a Polish landed family who had actually settled in Ukraine. And he moves to Paris in around the 1890s to become an art student. And that's where he meets Constance Gorbuz, who has also come from her origins in Lissadell House in County Sligo to study art in Paris.
What common interests artistically did they pursue together?
Both of them are trying to escape their backgrounds. They are attracted to Paris because it is the epicenter of the art world at the turn of the century. They're attracted to the freedom which it provides, to debates, to philosophy, to painting especially. So both of them are particularly there to attend art academies and to hone their painting skills.
Very quickly they fall in love and they marry.
So they meet in 1899, they meet at a ball in Paris, and it's initially just a complete love match. So they're very much smitten with one another. They're both of similar heights. He's 6'4", she's over 6 feet tall as well. So the two of them have very similar temperaments and interests in art and in conversation, and they very quickly become attached. So this case has artifacts and photographs which are related to their early lives and also about their meeting in Paris and their marriage.
And this handsome couple here now, who are they?
Well, it's a wonderful photograph. It's one of our favorites. And it shows them in cycling clothes. So this is why they look so informal. The two of them loved to cycle. Actually, for their honeymoon, they went on a bicycling honeymoon in Normandy. And they were very well-known figures in Dublin after they arrived back here. They were seen cycling all over Dublin with paints and canvases strapped to their bicycles, going around and painting the landscapes.
Or looking here at their wedding photograph.
So this is a portrait which really contrasts with the one on the left. It's their formal wedding portrait from 1900. And you see here she's in this elaborate silk dress, and it's a studio portrait. And we've paired these two photographs with a series of letters that relate to their engagement and marriage. So this letter here on the top left is Constance writing to her brother Jocelyn Gorbooth, and writing to him saying, "I'm engaged to a Polish man, hope you don't mind. He's a foreigner, but I'm in love, and this is what's going to happen." And the letter on the right-hand side is a letter from Eva Gorbooth, which was Constance's favorite sister. And she's writing back to Constance after she's announced the news of her engagement, saying, "I can't help but be frightfully amused when I think of the bomb bursting." This news that's going to be a bit of a bombshell for the family.
You can see it here, bomb bursting.
It's bomb bursting, yeah.
Lissadell House sits on the shores of Sligo Bay under the shadow of the majestic Ben Bulben. It was the ancestral seat of the Gorbooth family and the childhood home of Countess Markievicz. The house has many historic and literary connections, and the poet W.B. Yeats was a frequent visitor there.
Welcome to Sligo. It's so good to see you.
Thank you very much.
Today, the invited guests are following in the footsteps of another frequent visitor, Casimir Markievicz, who stayed at Lissadell following his marriage to Constance.
But we are very happy to welcome.
Lissadell is now home to Constance Cassidy, Eddie Walsh and their 7 children. They've invited members of the extended Markievicz family who've travelled from Poland for the exhibition and this historic occasion.
It is a great pleasure to welcome you all here to Lissadell, the home in which Constance Markievicz lived as a young girl, and the home to which she brought her husband, of whom she was immensely proud, Count Casimir Markievicz, to meet her family in 1901 after their marriage.
When Constance met Casimir, he was a widower and had a son with whom she became very close. Following their marriage, they had a daughter, Maeve, who was born and raised by the Gorbooth family at Lissadell. As time passed, a series of misfortunes befell the family. The house went into decline and they struggled to keep it going.
And the house, once one of the grandest in Ireland, is in sad disrepair. The view from these windows is gloomy. And to eke out a modest income, the Gorbooths, like many another Anglo-Irish family, show visitors around their home at 3 shillings a head. These paintings were by the Countess.
My aunt's, yes. Her drawings that we hung up when we opened the house. But we get an awful lot of interesting people. Poets, artists, professors, and from all nations in the world, even from behind the Iron Curtain. It was my aunt's glory hole where they wrote and painted when they were young. And you see it has east light, which you must have for painting.
After almost 2 centuries in residence, the last of the Gorbooth family left Lissadell in 2003. When Eddie and Constance bought the house, it had been in a state of neglect for over 70 years. They've spent the last 20 years restoring the house and grounds and collecting art and artefacts connected to the history of the house.
There was nothing in the house, nothing in the house. So Eddie and I came to Lissadell on the day of the auction, and every single thing that belonged to the house was up for auction. Including the blue seats, including the lovely pictures. Whatever happened, Eddie and I tried to buy whatever we thought was essential and integral to Lissadell.
Having bought the property itself, we looked and we said, what do we want to achieve? And clearly, the 2 pivotal figures in Lissadell are Constance Gorbooth and then W.B. Yeats. So we looked and said, what we really need to do is the turn of the century, when Constance is a young woman emerging onto the national stage, when Yeats is a young poet emerging into international stardom. And we looked and we said, we're really looking at an 1890 to 1920 atmosphere. So we set about really only buying the items that could enhance that.
W.B. Yeats often visited Lissadell and developed a great friendship with Constance and her sister Eva, immortalising them and the house in his poem In Memory of Eva Gorbooth and Con Markievicz, with its iconic opening lines. In the light of evening Lissadell, great windows open to the south.
But he talks of two girls in silk kimonos, both beautiful, one a gazelle, but a raving autumn shears blossom from the summer's wreath. The older is condemned to death, pardoned, drags out lonely years, conspiring among the ignorant. That's Constance. And Yeats was not sure that Constance had made the right choice in becoming part of the nationalist movement and taking part in the Rising. But he then, when he continues in his poem, he says, "Many a time I think to seek one or the other out and speak of that old Georgian mansion, mix pictures of the mind, recall that table and the talk of youth. Two girls in silk kimonos, both beautiful, one a gazelle."
And this, of course, is the dining room with these very amusing paintings done by my Polish uncle on the wall.
Done by Count Markievicz.
Yes, done by Count Markievicz.
Just to explain here, this was the Christmas present that Casimir presented to the Gorbooth family. Casimir got it into his mind he wanted to do something very special, and he took the view that the pilasters, which were just blank, they needed to be enlivened. Having consumed quite a considerable quantity of whiskey, it didn't affect his painting ability, but he proceeded to paint both himself and his brother-in-law Mordaunt as giants. He then decided to paint some of the retainers, Kilgallen, the famous butler, the Campbell, the woodsman, and then the Woods, who was in fact the gamekeeper. And so when the family came down the following day after a night of industry by Casimir, they're greeted by these murals. But they are incredible works of art, and they have survived since for over 115 years now. They're part of the fabric of the house. They're also part of what people remember from visits to the house.
Mr. Walsh, Madame Cassidy, thank you very much for this warm welcome.
Among the guests at Lissadell is Piotr Libicki, a member of the extended Markievicz family, who along with his cousins have loaned 10 of Casimir's paintings to the exhibition.
It is for our family a historical visit to the place which we knew in a way. I remember in our family house, on the wall, among a lot of photographs, family photographs, there was a portrait of Constance Markievicz. And that for us as a children was a strange image, because among photographs which were quite obvious to us, there was this portrait of a young woman. And finally we find out and we learned that it was our aunt, Countess Constance Markievicz, Casimir. And I'm an art historian, so I know what I'm saying. He was not the first class of the painters, but I think he was a personality, and that's what counted in his case. So that's who he was, in my opinion, a very loving life person who was not only a painter, but he was also a writer, a novelist, and a drama director. And of course, he here in Ireland was always in the shadow of Constance Markievicz, and for me it's quite obvious. She was the hero, she is a hero in the Irish history. But it's nice that this time we take him into light, that he comes out of the shade of his wife, and that not only Irish can learn who he was, but also we Polish people can meet him again.
This room represents the two halves of their lives when they moved to Dublin in 1903. So on the one hand, Constance and Casimir are involved in Dublin society, and on the other hand, they are indulging in the bohemian life that was Dublin at that point in time.
And this painting looks like a formal painting, is it? Where's it from?
So this painting didn't have to move far because it's normally here in Dublin Castle, and it's actually a scene from the castle. It's a painting by Casimir of the Earl of Mayo and his investiture into the Order of St. Patrick. And this is a period where Casimir is searching for new patrons for his work. And he and Constance have moved back to Dublin, and they are regular attenders of Dublin Castle balls. They're reintegrating into Dublin society. And that's what this picture really represents. And over here, in this case, we can also see some wonderful photographs, some of Dublin Castle and others of more casual life.
Yes.
So here in the middle is also another photograph of Dublin Castle. We see Constance there on the right-hand side. This is a ball that she was attending with Casimir there in the middle. It's a French Empire-themed ball. Yeah. And on the left-hand side, we see Casimir wearing the same outfit, but this is actually a slightly earlier photograph. This is Casimir wearing the same outfit, but in his Paris apartment. And what's really wonderful about this photograph is that there's a painting behind it that's also in the exhibition.
So that painting there is that there.
It's that painting over there. And that is actually on loan from one of the descendants of the Markievicz family. So it's come over from Poland for this exhibition.
What about their interest in the arts? It was more than simply flamboyance, performance, and display.
Absolutely. They're central in starting many of the most important arts organizations here in Dublin, which are still in existence today. And that's what these two cartoons by Beatrice Elvery represent. And this illustration on the left-hand side in particular is like a who's who of the Dublin art scene at the time. And so you see on his left-hand side, for example, is the figure of W.B. Yeats. Down at the bottom is the painter William Orpen. He's struggling. He's trying to herd everyone together and get them to stay still so he can actually paint their portrait.
So now we're looking at a landscape that is entirely different.
And this is a really special room because nearly all of the depictions that we see here in this room are of Ukraine. So Casimir's family were Polish, but they lived in what is now Ukraine, and they were landowners there. All of this was part of the Russian Empire at the time. And in 1902 and in 1903, Casimir and Constance traveled back to his family's estates, and they painted the landscape that they saw around them. And so many of the works that are here in this room are on loan from the extended Markievicz family, and they depict, in essence, a world that really vanished after the mid part of the 20th century.
But contrasting with the paintings, we have extraordinary photographs here.
They are from the Markievicz family, and they are descendants also of Casimir Markievicz, and they are photographs which were taken by Constance of Ukraine. When Constance is in Ukraine, it's the beginnings of her own awakening to consciousness around class, around nationalism. She's listening to the stories around the Polish quest for independence from Casimir's family, and it very much influences her own sense of Irish nationalism. And they are exceptional and really beautiful images of a world too which has long since disappeared.
Lissadell House in County Sligo is famed for being the childhood home of Irish revolutionary and activist Countess Markievicz. The house also has great artistic and literary associations, and the estate's stable block houses exhibition spaces that celebrate the lives of the people that have made their mark on Lissadell.
There she is at 3 or 4 years of age on her horse. This is one picture which I put up here, Dublin Castle. St. Patrick's Day 1908 was our last occasion attending Dublin Castle as a socialite. 1 week later, she's on the back of a lorry pronouncing Irish nationalism with India Naheran, the Daughters of Ireland. So she's now become a nationalist. Interesting though, she goes on the back of that lorry in her ball gown. And some of the women of Dublin kind of looked and said, who's this one? Turning up in her ball gown and all her finery. But within months they were satisfied she really was a believer and was going to promote the cause of Irish freedom.
So this room represents the final chapter in both their lives. We might start here. In some ways, this shows the point at which they separate. In 1913, Casimir leaves Dublin. And the reason for his leaving and for their separation is because of Constance's engagement in politics, her deeper move into the Irish revolutionary movement. Casimir isn't so interested in politics, really, and so they part ways very amicably, but they then lead separate lives from 1913. At the same time, however, Constance had been very much influenced by Casimir's family and by her understanding and interpretation of the Polish quest for independence. And so what we see here is a piece of music that Constance adapted. She changes the lyrics of a hymn from 1846 that's a Polish song, a patriotic song, and she adapts it as a marching song for the Fina, for the Boy Scouts that she founds, and also for the Irish Citizen Army.
So very much culturally influenced by Casimir.
Absolutely. And you see here too, two images of them in respective military uniforms. On the left-hand side, one of the very well-known portraits of Constance from 1916 in the uniform of the Irish Citizen Army. And Casimir, on the right-hand side, he joins the Russian army in 1914. This is all part of the quest for Polish independence, but he fights for the Russian army in the First World War.
I suppose we get a sense now of just how turbulent the world was at that period.
Everything is changing. Things are changing in Ireland and in Casimir's homelands as well, in Poland and Ukraine. Everything is in shift and in flux. And in 1919, his families actually lose their estates in Ukraine.
This painting here is full of poignancy.
It's from Lissadell House, and this painting is of Constance in her final days. This is Casimir's last visit to Ireland in 1927. He hears that she is ill, and he comes to be with her as she's dying. So what we see in this portrait is Constance looking out to the viewer. She's looking out to Casimir. It's quite a rough painting in some ways, but of course it's not meant to be sold or anything like this. This is a painting that's about the close relationship that still existed between the two of them. And you see she's still wearing her wedding ring in the picture. One of the most poignant objects here in this case is the Bible. This is a Bible which was owned by Constance since she was a child, and it was here at her deathbed. It was by her side, and in its pages are pressed flowers from Lissadell.
Ah, everything goes back to Lissadell.
We all talk about immigration and things like that. 1900, Constance Gore Booth, who was a woman ahead of her times, she finds her love with a Polish count, and she brings Poland to Ireland, and in turn Ireland comes to Poland.
So there is a connection. There's also this house in Ukraine which was destroyed during the revolution. So you can see this fluctuating relation between these three places. And in a way, they make the same story. They make the same input to the same story. And that's what is for me very touching. That I feel here a little bit like home.
If you'd like to find out more about Countess Markievicz or visit Lissadell House, it's open during the summer months. Equally, if you'd like to see the Casimir Markievicz exhibition, it's on display here at Dublin Castle until mid-September. That brings us to the end of this evening's Nationwide. From all of us on the team, bye-bye. On Friday's Nationwide, the story of a German man who came to Limerick in the 1940s and started a small enterprise making porcelain figurines. We meet his descendants and hear the story of Irish Dresden in Drumcollogher.